Welcome to the fifth installment of the CG character workflow from Fuse to Mixamo to Photoshop. In this segment we are going to compose the final renders into one presentation document, 11 by 17, as well as edit a few of the small hiccups that happen with each render. Understandably, it took me a while, but I have 4 files separate, one for each of the 4 poses. I've got my action pose, I've got my render layer that I copied and pasted once the render was done or canceled, and that is the same story for these other views, such as standing pose. There's my render, I copied and pasted and saved. Back and side. Now I'm ready to compose them into one single document. Each one still has the 3D layer hiding underneath. So these files are saved and I'm ready to move them into one document. What I want you guys to do is create a new document, and for critique, this new document will be 5100 pixels wide by 3300 pixels tall. That's an 11 by 17 print at 300 pixels per inch. You can see this if you do Control R on the keyboard, and you can right click in your rulers and you can change from pixels to inches, but in inches here it shows 11 by 17. Now that I have my document, I'm going to switch over to Essentials just to clean up my workspace. I'm going to undock each of these master Photoshop files and tackle them one at a time. Here's my render layer selected. I use my move tool and I drag and drop it into the 11 by 17 document. So what has just happened? It is now on its own layer and I can move it around. Let's do the same thing for the rest of them, and I'll speed this up. What I don't want to do is accidentally grab the 3D layer from the wrong file. We don't want to move the 3D layers, only the render layers that you copied and pasted and you saved elsewhere. So now that they're all in, we can take care of moving them about. I turn off auto select whenever I'm working in Photoshop, and the move tool, auto select turned off. I know I can target the layers a little bit easier. I can right click and find the one that I need, and in this case I might rename these. Now that I have renamed them, I can easily right click and find the ones I need. Holding down the shift key, you can scoot on the x-axis . Traditionally it goes front and then side and then a 3/4 view, or in this case for us it's an action view. Get them to where they're standing all on the same plane. In this moment I have shadows for my views all running towards the left a little bit. I gave you guys advice not to let yours run off the canvas, but in this case I've moved them around and some are running off the canvas. It's okay, I still had good shadows in each layer, but they may be rolling over top of each other. So an easy fix is just to think about from left to right. My front pose is top, and then my side pose is next, and then my back is next in line, top to bottom, and action poses is underneath those. If you need to overlap because you have some really distinct action pose, that's okay. But this is the best look that I can put together for the presentation. Now let's save our work, and this is my I'm going to keep this as a Photoshop file so that I can edit it later if I need to. Plus we're going to work on some text elements here at the top. So as I've been examining the collection of renders here at 100%, I've noticed some foibles with the render. Here in the gloves, there's a strange bit of webbed fingers happening in that hand, and we may have some other parts that things have fallen off or gotten weird, such as in this case, I don't know, this looks like it doesn't belong. So I'm going to use a clone stamp, and here's how the clone stamp works. Make sure I've got the right layer selected. Make sure that I give myself a happy snapshot just in case I screw things up. This is your clone stamp tool. It's the most traditional old school version, but also there are tools called healing brush and the spot healing brush, which could be helpful. But let's learn the good old-fashioned clone stamp tool. It works with all of the characteristics of any other brush setting: softness, hardness, size of your brush. Right and left bracket also go down in size for the brush tool, and in this case the clone stamp tool. Alt click samples an area, and now when you go to paint, you are painting a sample from one spot to the next. The spot healing brush works out pretty good also, and all you need to do is point and click with that. So use a combination of the clone stamp tool and the spot healing brush and touch up all these pieces. I'm going to speed things up. So I've used a combination of clone stamp, healing brush, and applying masks. And in the mask, remember, you paint with black or white. Black hides, white reveals. Make sure you know that you're painting in the right part of the two sections of a layer that has a mask. Paint in the mask, don't paint over pixels. So I'm going to get things back to a nice view, reveal my background layer. Now's a chance to think about some type that goes across your image. I've got this English London kind of vibe. Go to one of my favorite free font websites, Font Squirrel. And in Font Squirrel, I know that the category of black letter will give me some old English looking font. Medieval. I like this one. Here's a trick with managing fonts in the lab. Find the zip, go into it, find the font file inside the zip, either a true type font or an open type font. You got to move it to your own space. Once you've moved it to your own space, you can right click and install it. You may have to quit Photoshop, so make sure your work is saved. My work is saved. I'm going to restart Photoshop. Now I know that font should be available in my character palette. I'm going to switch over to a type tool. Hotkey is T. Now I want to show my character palette. Click to set a text element. Hit the Enter key to commit, And now I can use the move tool to move it about. I've got this nice convenient area right here for a type element. So I might move this and plan for that spot. My font, well, that's great, but I can't see it. So let's transform it. Free transform is Control T, or here under the edit menu. And when you scale it up, hold down the Shift key. Don't distort your type. Ooh, that looks terrible. Okay, hold down the Shift key. For all that is good and holy, hold down the Shift key. New versions of Photoshop, it's the opposite. You don't hold down the Shift key. But our version in the past 25 years of Photoshop is hold down the Shift key. I'm going to hit the enter. That commits to this. And I've got some awkward spacing right here. This would be called kerning. I want to get the type tool, select this space, and don't be hijacked by that awkward spacing. This is kerning. Dial it in. Kerning takes a lot of numbers, 400. That looks much better. Have some more fun with type, and don't just settle for one. Give the character, I don't know, a subheading. But in this case, I'm going to choose to have a whole nother type layer. I can have more latitude with moving those things around. So there it is. Yeah, there's not a lot of great type contrast here. So I might choose something that supports this. This is the headline. It has flare. Why take away that thunder by coming up with a line that's exactly the same? I might choose a font like Rockwell. And look for a place to nest it in this particular setting. So there you have it. A little bit of type element in the right place. Look for a good negative space. You can scoot the whole situation up and put type text across the bottom. Look for those happy and comfortable places. Come up with a subheading. Use type contrast. And pick fonts that make sense for time and place or culture and mood. Now, one last thing you can consider is if you didn't get the lighting just quite right, you think it might be too dark, etc., we can do some edits right here on these pixel layers. Well, let's always think about non-destructive editing. So we save backup copies of our layers. So I'm going to go and do a little trick called copy merge. I'm going to hide my text layer for the moment. And I'm going to select all. And instead of copy, I'm going to choose copy merge. It's going to take a snapshot, so to speak, of all of the layers, no matter how many are stacked. What we see is what we get. So the next time you go to paste this time, then a layer came in, and it is all of the layers together. Remember, this is just a single layer. And I'm just going to call this copy merge. We still have our layers backed up. I'm going to hide them for now. And in this copy merged example, I'm going to do some edits. I'm going to right click on this copy merge layer and convert it to a smart object. It is now a separate Photoshop file saved within a Photoshop file. Notice the icon. So whenever you run a filter on it, it will start a stack of filters underneath here on the layer that you can turn on and off and edit later. So the filter we're going for is called Camera Raw Filter. And it is a nice all-in-one place to edit shadows, change the temperature, reduce or increase contrast, clarity and dehaze are convenient to play with. But in this case, I noticed that I just had a little bit of a problem with some dark shadows from my original lighting setup. I'm going to slide this around till it feels right. And I think I'm going to push the temperature up a little bit. Oh no, maybe that's too drastic. I'll stay with 0. I can change clarity if I want to. Got lots of edgy attitude, but that's not my mood right now, so I believe I'm going to stick with just some opening up of the shadows. If I change my mind later on, I can come back to this layer and the Smart Object filters and double click Camera Raw and make a change. Maybe drop the blacks down a little bit. So I feel like I've got a nice lighting situation. I can turn on my text layers and rearrange my stacking order. And now I've got a brighter, more pleasing approach to my critique.